it's Mo. Welcome to a part 2 of my January vlog style monthly reading wrap up. These are videos that I do every month where I talk about the books that I've read throughout the month as close to when I've finished them as I can, so I don't forget and so I don't talk too much. I try to talk for only about 5 minutes about each book. I try to tell you something about the book, what I thought of it, if I think you should read it too. So this month just got away from me. It got very, very long and it was going to be an over an hour video. I'm trying not to make these vlog style monthly reading wrap-ups over an hour. I try to keep them, I mean, ideally I'd like to keep them to like 45 or 50 minutes, but that doesn't always happen, especially not when I have books that I really, really want to talk about. So I am looking for a new way to do this. I mentioned this in part 1 of this video, but if you have any ideas of how I could change my reading wrap-ups, I read a lot of books every month. I read like 12 to 20 books on average. So if you can think of some ways that I might be able to make multiple wrap-ups, do a mid-month wrap-up, do weekly updates, and then just run through the books that I've read, or what you like to see, what are some things that creators you watch do to alleviate this problem? Let me know in the comments below. Let's get back into the books that I read in January. The next book that I finished in January was Never Whistle at Night by various authors. This is a collection of horror short stories by Indigenous authors. There's so many authors in this. Darcy Little Badger, Tommy Orange. Let me actually look. Let's see. Shane Hawk. Lots of different authors, some of which I've read from before, some of which I've loved, and some of which I have never read from before. I had wanted to read this collection of short stories partly because it's a collection of Indigenous horror short stories, partly because it had a lot of authors that I liked, but I ended up reading it because I needed a never word for the Buzzword Reading Challenge in the end of 2025. So I started this on audio in 2025 in December, but I wasn't able to finish it before my loan was up and there was someone waiting, so I couldn't extend it. So I had to wait and I finished the rest of it in January. So you can see more of my thoughts in a vlog that I have all about that. I vlogged my experience doing the Savage prompts, the Ben Read Good prompts, the Buzzword cover prompts, and the Buzzword Reading Challenge. This was tough to get through. I'm surprised because there were so many authors that I really liked and there were so many authors that I wanted to read more from, or I wanted to read from for the first time, but like none of these stories were very memorable. Like if I had to tell you what happened in any of these stories right now, I don't think I could, you know? It was a while since I read it and it's been more than a month since I started reading it, but there was no story that was like amazing to me. There was no story that felt totally standout. All of these kind of seemed like B-list stories from these authors. Some of them were debuts and they felt like debuts. All the essence was there for this to be a good collection. The great writers, I read this on audio and the narrators were really good. I love that they had a couple of different narrators so you could read multiple stories without all the stories and all the narrators blurring together. There was great themes. It was horror, so of course there were supernatural horrors, there was social horror, there was everyday horror, horror of the Indigenous experience, there was horror of womanhood, there was horror of familial connection, like had every potential to be great, but it was really not great. I don't know if the way that I read anthologies or the way that I read short stories doesn't really work for audio that well, and that's why it wasn't a great reading experience for me, and that's why I didn't love any of these stories. I don't know if the stories themselves were not that great. I don't know if reading it over such a long period really made a bad impression on me, but whatever it was a miss, like all around a big miss for me, which is a shame. But that being said, I think it's always worth reading Indigenous stories. I think it's always worth reading Indigenous authors. There were a few authors in this collection that I would read from again now that I've read one story from them. There were many authors in this story that I've read from before and loved, so I would definitely read more from them. I did DNF 2 stories, one for animal violence and one for child sexual assault. I think both of them were from authors that I've read from before as well. So that didn't really like color my opinion of those authors, but I just was not in the place where I was going to read about those things. Let that be known. Maybe that marred my experience as well. I would say if you get this one from the library, if you're interested in reading more Indigenous stories, if you're interested in reading more Indigenous horror, if you're interested in reading more Indigenous authors, to find authors that you want to read more from, this is a good collection for that. But overall, it was completely forgettable, unfortunately. The next book that I finished in January is Second Sight by A.K. Ramanujan. This is a collection of poetry, and it was written in the 1980s, I believe. Yes, 1986. Ramanujan is an Indian poet. He is also a translator, and he is also an editor of poetry. He speaks multiple languages, including Tamil, and I've read one other book that he translated and edited, which was a collection of ancient Indian and Tamil poetry. So I thought this was interesting. I tabbed quite a bit at the bottom. I didn't love this collection of poetry. I didn't super connect with anything, but it talks a lot about different places. There's some poetry set in the United States. There's some poetry set in various places that he traveled. There's some poetry kind of linking everywhere and everything and how it's connected to each other. That idea of kind of anywhere you go, there you are. And so his basis of experience and knowledge comes into like wherever he is at the moment. There's stories of like boyhood and manhood. Now, having read this a few weeks ago, I can't like super remember any of the poems. There's none that super stood out to me. So this is one that I did enjoy, and I enjoyed my time with it, and I'm super excited to reread. All the poetry that I read, I'm so excited to reread because sometimes I connect with it and I absolutely love it, and sometimes I don't, and I wonder if that's a time and a place thing for me, or if that's a mental thing for me, or if I didn't understand it. I'm not super versed, no pun intended, at reading poetry, so maybe it's just my limited understanding and capacity for poetry that made me not connect to it. There was stuff that I really liked. I tabbed it a lot. So when I go back and reread this, I think it'll be really interesting to see what was I liked and see what elements of the poetry I am connected to or drawn to upon reread. Next, I read Keys to the City, Tales of a New York City Locksmith by Joel Costman. This is a nonfiction book, a collection of essays by Joel Costman that was collected in 1997, and Joel is a locksmith, a master locksmith, and an emergency locksmith. So this is a little bit like William Carlos Williams, A Doctor's Story, or any of those collections of little stories that someone in a specific industry connects and creates a book out of. So these are just little vignettes, little stories, little remembrances of things that have happened to Joel in his time as an emergency locksmith, all gathered together. And Joel is pretty funny, and the stories are usually pretty poignant or pretty funny or pretty sentimental, or sometimes a little bit romantic, not necessarily couple romantic, not necessarily romance between people, but romance of like the city or romance of the environment. He goes to all different places, from the highest end apartment buildings, from the highest end mansions in Manhattan to the projects in Brooklyn, and he travels all over helping people. Like I said, sometimes his stories are very funny and silly, sometimes they're a little bit more serious, sometimes he gets into situations that maybe he shouldn't be getting into, but he tells everything in a pretty like lighthearted, tongue-in-cheek, happy way, and it was just like a pleasure to read and enjoy. And I read this all within 24 hours. It's very short, under 150 pages, and the stories are just like very readable. Being written in 1997, there is definitely some language used that we would not use today. There were definitely some descriptions used that we would not use today. There were definitely some male gaze type things that happen in this book and in these stories, but overall it was just like such a fun read. It was so great. It was very New York, which I loved, and I loved the format, and it definitely made me want to read like The Doctor's Stories by William Carlos Williams and some of those other books that are just vignettes and little essays on someone's career. The next book that I finished in January was Through Gates of Garnet and Gold, which is the 11th in the Wayward Children series by Shauna Maguire. I Got this one right away the day that it came out on audio. I love the Wayward Children series, which starts with Every Heart a Doorway. So if you're not familiar with the Wayward Children series or Every Heart a Doorway, Every Heart a Doorway sees us learning about Eleanor West School for Wayward Children, which is a school for kids who have gone through portal doors. So just like Alice in Wonderland, just like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, kids all over the world, and sometimes adults, end up going through portal doors into different worlds, into the worlds they are meant to be in. So most of these kids find worlds that are more true to themselves and find roles in these worlds that are more true to themselves than in our world, our reality. But unfortunately, sometimes these kids are expelled from their worlds and from their doors. So sometimes they choose to leave, or they're not ready to stay in those worlds, or sometimes they are forced to leave these worlds and they have to go back through their doors. And usually when this happens, the children are very despondent because they're not supposed to be in this reality. They're supposed to be in those realities. Those are their true worlds. So Eleanor West is a person like that, and she created a school where these kids could go so that the parents would feel better about why their children disappeared, about why their children are not the same as they once were, but also so the kids can lead a life where they don't have to pretend that that didn't happen and don't have to pretend why they're so upset that they're not in the right place. That's the basic premise of the story. And then in all the books, we meet a cast of characters who live at Eleanor's school, and we meet Eleanor, and we meet different teachers and different people who work at the school and see why they're all there. And mostly we see the students and the doors that the students went through. So every other book is a quest book. Even though Eleanor West's school supposedly is not supposed to have quests, these kids go on a lot of quests and they end up going through different portal doors into different worlds. They end up learning about each other and about themselves by going on these quests and solving these problems. The opposite books are about one person and the world that they were supposed to go to, and then how that connects to the current timeline and to Eleanor's school. So we'll see like the history of different people, how they found the door, and what happened when they first found the door in alternating books. And then we meet back up with a lot of those people throughout the different stories. So we're on number 11. These are all novellas. They're all very short. I knew that I was going to read this one all in one day, and I have had it for a while, but I was waiting for a day that I knew that I could concentrate on it, because now when I read these, like, I just cry the whole day and I wanted to be home, and I just like feel so much like nostalgia and longing, and they're great. I love them, but they also are so melancholy and bittersweet to me in so many ways. Through the Gates of Gold and Garnet and Gold was similar, and it definitely put me in a little bit of a book hangover like the whole rest of the day. Not just a hangover, but like a mood hangover. Like I was feeling super depressed the rest of the day when I finished it. Obviously, it's hard to talk about what later books in this series are, but Garnet and Gold is a quest book. So we see someone who has returned to their portal world coming back to the school needing help. And so a bunch of the kids who are already in the school or are still in the school or who are new to school from recent books go out on this quest. And one of the reasons that they go on the quest is because they have formed these strong bonds with the various people, and they're sad because they're trying to find their portal doors. They're trying to go back to the worlds and the lives that they're supposed to lead. But they're also sometimes sad when the people who do end up doing that are gone from their lives. So it's a constant melancholy of being happy for the person who's gotten to go to the world and being sad that they can't do the same, but also missing those people and wishing that they were still with them in some ways. And definitely you could read into that, and there's talk of it in this book about the idea of death, and are the portal worlds the person dying, or if they're gone from the world, is it basically the same thing as them dying? All the Wayward Children series have heavy topics in them. A lot of them talk about like queerness, otherness. A lot of them talk about abuse. A lot of them talk about not fitting in. A lot of them talk about relationships. Every book has a lot going on and has a lot of conversations that you could have. But overall, you get to know these different characters and you get to want things for them and you get to feel that same like melancholia that they feel when people come and go from Eleanor West School. And in this one particularly, we see some people stepping up in the school and some people kind of stepping down in the school, which is interesting. And we get a few glimpses into what might happen in the future. This is a book that's taken a little bit of a time jump. It takes place after the previous books, which is interesting to note and interesting to see who's still at the school after those time jumps. Interesting to see the dynamics of the different people who are there. I love these books. I will continue to read them all the time. I'm working on getting these all physically so that I can reread them physically. I did reread Every Heart a Doorway last year. I might continue on rereading the series because they're so fun, because they're so short, because they're great on audio, or I might not. But every year I'll read the new one. The next book that I read so far in January is Lucky Jim by Kingsley Amis. I read this one on audio, but I have this copy. And this is a modern classic written in the 50s in England. And our main character, Jim, is like a pretty unlikable character. He is a school teacher at like a prep school or a college. I never really understand like the levels of schooling in England, but it's like maybe between high school and college, whatever that school is, or maybe it's college similar to like Oxford or something like that. And we see our main character, Jim, being this unlikable character, being unsure of his job security, hating his head professor who he has to work under and who he has to do errands and stuff for to keep his job secure. We see him having a relationship with another teacher at the school that borders on romance, but he doesn't really find her that attractive, and she's recently gone through a tough time and he's sympathetic to her, and mostly he's like not a very nice guy who like curses out the people that he's spoken to moments before in his head afterwards. And mostly he's kind of a bungler when he first got to the school, and one of the reasons that his position is not secure is that he's made quite a few social faux pas. He definitely feels like the ground is never solid for him. He just gets into like scrapes. He gets into uncomfortable situations. He visits his professor's house and ruins a pair of sheets and then hides them. He calls up to talk to someone who's staying at the house, but then doesn't want to talk to his head professor's wife, so he puts on a fake voice, but she can tell it's him. You know, like silly episodes and escapades like that. And through this story, we see him becoming enamored of another woman who has been added to the group. What he does in life and how he thinks about his relationships with people and his relationship to work and his relationship to school and what's going to happen to him. And he is kind of lucky in that like nothing really bad ever happens to him, but he definitely isn't like a wholly likable character. But on the other hand, he is sympathetic to certain people, and he does kind of learn sometimes from his ways that being nasty like that isn't the best thing. This reminded me a lot of Evelyn Waugh, reminded me a lot of Decline and Fall. Just not quite as well written, not quite as endearing, not quite as engaging as Evelyn Waugh's writing or any of those kind of school time Oxbridge style writing books. But I liked it. I like this school setting, this academic setting. I like having like a bungling, haphazard main character. And I liked the ending of this book, which I didn't expect at all. There's definitely some disparaging things said about women. There's definitely some disparaging things said about minorities, racial minorities, and otherwise. There's definitely that spoiled, snooty college atmosphere that a lot of these books have. But it was fun. It took me a while to get into. I did read this over quite a bit of time, and I did have to stop the audiobook a couple times, and I read other audiobooks in between, which I don't think really did this any favors. Overall, I would read more Kingsley Amis, especially now knowing what I know of what might happen in some stories. I like the writing style. It is very British. It is very Oxbridge. It is very satirical, farcical, Evelyn Waugh style writing, but Evelyn Waugh definitely does it better. So those are all the books that I've read so far in January. I think I said at the beginning of this that it is the 22nd, so I have quite a few more days left to read in January. I'm getting through a lot of books. I'm still working on my Read What You Own challenge. I'm going to do an update on that soon, and when I read some more, I'll let you know. It is February 2nd, and I have read all the last books that I'm going to be reading in January. I'm going to talk about them here, and then I'm going to do a wrap-up of this January wrap-up in a little bit, but the next book that I finished in January was Whale Day and Other Poems by Billy Collins. Now, this is the third Billy Collins that I've read, and I really liked the first one that I read, which I think was called 9 Horses, and then I hated the second one that I read, and I have this one and one other, and I was thinking about unhauling them. I was thinking about getting rid of them, but I was like, you know what? I need a poetry book. I would like to read something very easy, very light, not a lot of big brain energy needed to read, so I picked this one up. I also wanted to give Billy Collins another try because I enjoyed one collection so much and really hated one collection so much. This one fell right in the middle. I enjoyed it. I did not have the extreme reaction to it that I did to the second collection. I liked the poems. I tabbed a fair amount at the bottom. So these are poems that I would like to revisit, themes that I liked, lines that I liked. So I think I will keep the other book, and I think I will read that last collection as well. I don't know if I kept that Billy Collins book that I didn't like. I might have gotten rid of it. I'll keep this one for my poetry collection. I have like a whole poetry shelf. Billy Collins has been a poet laureate. I don't know if that's something that you always are or it's just for a certain amount of time. This says 2-term United States Poet Laureate. So I guess they go in terms. I really like this cover too with the whale in the sky. That's cool. He's like a white, well-off, rich man who travels around the United States and travels around other countries. And his poems are very like whimsical. They definitely have themes of travel. They definitely have meta themes of him writing poetry and thinking about poetry. But his poetry is very simple, very simplified. It's very like his everyday work or thought process or observations, and it's not very heady, and it's not very obscure, and it's not very in-depth from my perspective. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is. I don't know a lot about poetry. I like poetry, and I read poetry to learn more about poetry. I think Billy Collins' overall like privilege and white male privilege that is unacknowledged in this book or in his books, in his work, is like the problem that I have with them. Even though he talks about not taking things for granted in many poems, he very much takes for granted that he gets all these opportunities, that he is privileged white male and he gets to go wherever he wants and do whatever he wants, and he has plenty of money, and he gets to, walk around with his dog and just think about poetry, and he gets to spend all day procrastinating doing his work, which is poetry, because he doesn't have to do it in a timely manner. He doesn't have to work hourly wage. He doesn't have to do those things. And maybe it's a me problem because a lot of the poetry that I love and I relate to are more about struggle and are more about inner turmoil and are more about outer turmoil, are about having to struggle in the world, are about women's place in the world, are about experiences that are hard, and all the experiences in Billy Collins' poems are very easy. His biggest problem is that like he gets up and he looks out the window for 3 hours and doesn't get his work done, and then he has a good lunch, or he travels somewhere. Like, I do take issue with that. I think Mary Oliver does a similar simple tone to her poetry in some respects. Like, this poetry collection starts with him talking about his elderly dog, and I know Mary Oliver has a whole dog poetry book. I think I have it actually. And it was heartfelt in this. The poem was very sweet. It was very sad. It was wonderful. But her simple observations are more universal, and they're more relying on and playing on that universality and that mundanity that everyone can, even if it's only in glimpses of their life, identify with and can maybe take solace in, whereas his just come across pretentious a lot of the times and like a little bit pandering to like his own brilliant mind and a little bit, I don't know, just unacknowledged of like shared experience, or that people have shared experiences but in a different way. There's something about it that just like rubs me the wrong way. Again, there's lines that I like, there are things that I identify with, there are parts that I'm interested in, so I will read that last collection probably pretty soon, but I don't know if I'll really go out of my way to pick up any more of his work. The next book that I finished in January was 8 Lives of a Century-Old Trickster by Marini Lee. This is a Korean author. She lives in Hong Kong. She was born in Seoul, lives in Hong Kong, and this story takes place in Korea. Oh, it's upside down. And it opens with a woman working in a elderly care facility in an old folks home, really more in like a, what do we call that here? Like a hospice kind of situation. Like people are not going to leave this place. Assisted living, that's what we call it here. It's an assisted living facility, and some of the facility is designated for people with extreme memory issues. And our protagonist is older, I think she's 47, and her husband just dumped her for a younger woman. She had wanted to have kids, her husband didn't, and now he's having kids with that younger woman. And we learn all this in the first couple of pages, but what we also learn is that she has heard about this program in other care facilities where they obituate? Is that a word? They do obituaries for the patients with the patients. So the patients can write their own obituaries and have kind of a closure moment on their own demise, on their own death. And so she starts going around and doing this at her assisted living facility. And she's kind of just a admin person, so she like has time to do this. She's not like a doctor or anything like that. And after a few of these, she meets a woman who is 99 years old. She's about to turn 100, and she's in the Alzheimer's wing and the memory problem wing of this care facility. And so our main character is just like, oh, she's got Alzheimer's, like this isn't really going to work for her. But this woman is obviously very lucid, and she tells this woman that she's there for a reason. She tells her that she needs to talk about her life in 8 lives. That's the very first chapter. And then the rest of the book is like the story within the story that this woman is telling about her life. And she's lived all these different lives: slave, escape artist, murderer, terrorist, spy, lover, mother. The different stories she's told are broken up into the different lives: the 5th life, the 1st life, the last life, etc., etc. And the stories are told sometimes from her perspective, but sometimes from other people's perspectives. And you know that eventually all the stories are going to come together, all the lives, because they're told out of order. They don't go the 1st life, the 2nd life. They might go the 5th life, the 1st life, the 3rd life. So you know that everything is going to come together, but you don't exactly know how. And because the stories aren't all told from her perspective, sometimes it takes you a little while to figure out how that person who is telling you the story is connected to this main character. And then in the background, every once in a while, we get our main character, our century-old trickster, talking to the woman we met in the beginning at the care facility. This is very simply written. This is a debut novel, and it did initially read a little simple. Read a little like almost YA in the cadence and in the way that things were explained. But I think later it kind of hits its stride, and it definitely brings you in with all the different stories about this one person, and you want to know how they're all connected, and you want to know how her lives transition from one to the next, and how she got to this care facility, because like in the back of your mind you're always thinking like, why is she here? So I thought it was really interesting. I think maybe it lost a little direction with the story within the story. Like I love the idea of it of being a story within a story, but I don't think we needed so much ramping up to the initial story with like learning this other auxiliary character's life. We didn't need the person recording the trickster's life, because I think the idea by this author was that this woman would listen to this story and then like realize something about her life. It never came full circle like that. And even if it did, this woman's problems are that her husband left her and she doesn't have kids, not that like she escaped from North Korea, you know? So I just feel like that kind of plot device of like having the story within the story would have been better if that initial character was either more in it or like less in it. Just a means to the end. Just a way to do it. There is a part at the end where we come back to the present day that I think is really good. I don't know if we needed the information about the other character. So I would definitely be interested in reading more from this author. I did like this one. If you're interested in a adventurous tale, a harrowing tale, definitely check trigger warnings because there is a lot of sexual assault. There's a lot of rape in this because for a time our main character is a comfort woman. There is a lot of abusive women. There is a lot of death. There is a lot of violence. There is a lot of talk about oppressive systems, talk of murder, lots and lots of trigger warnings. And it wasn't shy about just saying those things very simply like it said everything else, which I came to respect. And once I got into like the cadence of this, the tone of this, I did end up really enjoying the way it was very simply written. I don't think this is one that I'll like keep on my shelves or I'm likely to reread necessarily, but I definitely think it was worth the read. The next book that I finished in January is The Girl from the Sea by Lee Knox Ostertag. There's a note that says that their name they prefer to be called is Lee. So this is a YA graphic novel about a girl who lives on a little tourist island. It was unclear where it was. It seemed like it was in Canada, like Nova Scotia or somewhere. Maybe it did say, and I don't remember. She's in high school. She has a circle of friends, but she feels very, very different from them, partly because she knows she's queer, and she knows that she's just biding her time and waiting to get out of this little town to go to college so she can like live her true life. Her parents have recently divorced. The relationship with her father is very strained, and this has also caused a strain on the relationship with her and her brother. So when she encounters a girl from the sea, it changes all her plans. It changes all her ideas of her own queerness, of her relationship with people, of the island in general. And at first, although she is very attracted to this girl from the sea, she doesn't really believe what's actually happening. And then when she's forced to understand that this is a real person of a sort and that they're there for a limited time, she has to decide what to do. So she has to, you know, balance everything out, being queer and not wanting her friends and family to know. She has to balance out wanting to spend time with her friends, but not really enjoying the things that they do, like going shopping and having extravagant parties. She has to decide whether her drive to get off this island is more important than helping this island and helping the people on this island. And of course, the girl from the sea is going to help her figure this out. So this was fine. It was cute. I liked it. It was very sweet. I think I definitely cried at one point. Does it say on my thing? Yeah, because queer joy and like parents accepting their queer children is always going to make me cry, like always. But this is not my favorite version of this story. I didn't love the artwork. I mean, it's fine. It's very pretty. I guess I like mine to be a little more like themed. I like it to be like a little less colorful, maybe, like have more of a consistent color palette, I guess. I kind of thought that our main character was a little bit of a brat. You know, of course there's a turnaround where she doesn't treat the girl well and then she does treat the girl well, which is nice. I like that our main character makes some of her own clothes, and that's like something that sets her apart that she feels like she can't do necessarily, but then gets back into. So, I mean, it was fine. It was sweet. I will definitely be passing this along at the end of the year to hopefully a queer young person to see themselves in it. I mean, I liked it. I definitely liked it. It's just not one of my favorites of this type of graphic novel. Editing Mo here again. I did skip one book this month somehow, 6 Feet Deep Dish. This is a cat cozy mystery by Mindy Quigley. And I think the reason that I forgot it was because I did do a whole cat cozy mystery vlog and I talked about this book at length. So I will leave that listed down below. It's already come out, so you can check out more of my thoughts on cozy mysteries, on cat cozy mysteries in general, and on this book in particular. particular. 6 Feet Deep Dish follows a young woman who is opening a restaurant with her fiance. They are very, very different. She is very type A. He is very go with the flow. He's very chill. He's very everything will work out. And she has worked in the restaurant industry. She has been a chef. She has been a sous. She knows the industry and she wants things done the way she wants them done. And it's been her lifelong dream to open this restaurant on this small island outside of Chicago. She's Chicagoan and this island is technically part of Michigan and her grandmother lives there, and it's just a wonderful idyllic place that she's always wanted to live, that she's always wanted to be, and marrying her rich boyfriend, finally being engaged to her rich fiance, has created this opportunity for her. And she gets to open a pizza restaurant there as well. She has collected a group of people, most of whom she knows from the restaurant industry. Her best friend who worked for like a Michelin star restaurant, wonderful bartender that she met in Puerto Rico. All these people have come to start this restaurant with her, and it is their soft opening. Not everything is going right. So our main character is getting ready for her grandma and her grandma's carer to be there. She's getting ready for her fiance to be there. But her fiance is being kind of flighty as always, and when more things go wrong, they get into a huge fight and her fiance walks out. The soft opening goes on as planned, but our main character is now more concerned about the restaurant, concerned about her relationship, concerned about everything that's happening in the kitchen and in the dining room. She hears a shot. She goes outside and her grandmother's carer has been shot and killed, and her grandmother is holding the gun. Of course, the police are called, and of course, her grandma is going to be a main suspect, but our main character is a little bit surprised that the handsome policeman detective who comes to investigate this murder doesn't hold her or her grandmother. He lets them go on with their day, go on with their lives while he investigates this case. So our main character needs to open a restaurant. She needs to figure out what's going on with her fiance. He disappeared. She doesn't know where he is. She has to care for her grandmother who has been acting strangely. She has to get the restaurant ready to open. Like, she still needs to open this restaurant. So she goes about her business, but she quickly realizes that with the police there, with an investigation, with all the people milling around, with all the potential suspects, everyone in her kitchen is a potential suspect. She decides she needs to find out what happened before the police do. She decides she needs to take it upon herself to solve this crime. And of course, this wouldn't be a cat cozy mystery without a cat in the family, and her cat, Butterball, who was originally her boyfriend's cat, and now she's worried that she might lose Butterball too, helps her with her investigation, helps her find some clues along the way. So this is a pretty standard cat cozy mystery. I read this book on audio. I got it as a bonus borrow from Hoopla. Usually when there are books on there, I'm not interested in them, so I decided I wanted to grab this, even though it doesn't count towards the Read What You Won't challenge. I really liked this one. It was really fun. It's very standard. It has people of color. It has queer characters. It has a hunky detective. It has a quirky but well-meaning main character, and it has our cat who unknowingly, unwittingly is helping solve the case by just being a cat, helping that way. I loved the service industry aspects of it. I liked that it was very Chicago, like the audiobook has a very Chicagoan accent, and I think there's going to be a lot of nods to Chicago. We've already seen the idea of mobsters coming up and the mob and the history of Chicago and the clash between the criminal element in Chicago historically and the police in Chicago. So, you know, I'm sure there's going to be some history that comes up there. It seems like the author really loves food. It seems like maybe they dabbled in the service industry even though they weren't a big part of it. It definitely seems like they know Chicago pretty well and this island that is a real place, I assume, to the extent that they wanted to set a book series there. So I would definitely read more from the series. I think it's a perfectly fun, fine cat cozy mystery. One of the better ones. Well, I've read quite a few good ones, but I would put it right up there with some of the other cozy mysteries that I've been reading lately and cat cozy mysteries, and I think this one, because of the service industry aspect and because of the cat content, I love a shore town, I love a vacation destination, you know, setting, so I would definitely put this a little bit higher up on my list, and I definitely will continue on with the series. The last book that I read in January is After Dark, My Sweet by Jim Thompson. This is the second Jim Thompson that I've read, and I read this partly because it has the word after in it, and the Books and Lala prompt for the Buzz Reading Challenge is after, before, and after. And partly because it's been on my shelves forever. This was on my pre-2022 TBR, so I've had this one for a very, very long time. And I like Jim Thompson. I like noir. I've read The Grifters by Jim Thompson. I think that's the only one that I read from him. I'm pretty sure. I didn't think I was going to like this. Like, the first quarter of this book, we're meeting our main character whose nickname is Collie. His last name is Collins, and he has just escaped from a mental institute, and he has gone to war, and he has struggled all his life with violent tendencies, but he has gone through therapy, and the doctor said he was improving, but he just kind of got bored at being at the mental health facility, so he escaped. And when we first meet him, he's walking into a bar against his better judgment, and he immediately meets this woman who says, "Hey, come home with me. You look like a swell guy." And of course, she's gorgeous. Her name is Faye. Well, gorgeous to him. She's actually quite a bit old and run down, and she definitely has substance abuse problems. But Collie is not the best decision maker, and he goes with her to her house, and she introduces him to, I think his name is like Uncle. Not her uncle, it's just what he's called. And you kind of slowly realize, because Collie is slowly realizing, that they have picked him up for a specific reason, and that they are planning on using him as a dupe, as a sucker for some reason. And throughout the book, we learn about the different relationships between these people, and we learn what they want Collie for, whether Collie's going to go along with it. But Collie is not a stupid person. Collie is a smart person with mental health issues. So he is often taken in by people. He often allows people to do him wrong because he wants to believe the best in people, and because he doesn't trust himself. And so another person who helps Collie at some point in this book is an actual psychiatrist. We think that maybe he is purely going to help Collie, but we soon realize, and Collie soon realizes, that there are definitely ulterior motives that this man has too. Is he a bad person? No, not necessarily, but there are like ulterior motives that are not the best. He's not doing the best thing by Collie, and Uncle and Faye are not doing the best things by Collie, but Collie kind of gets stuck in this whirlpool between these three people, and between his desire to be independent and his desire to stick near people. And throughout this book, we kind of see Collie realizing what's happening, becoming more confident in himself, and making decisions that are going to affect his life and the life of all these people, and the final outcome of this nefarious deed that they want Collie to be like a sucker for. I think it's really, really well done. Like, that's the thing. Like, obviously, Jim Thompson is a classic author, noir author. Obviously, his work is renowned. Things like The Getaway and The Grifters and all of his other work are right up there with Raymond Chandler and other writers of this ilk. But I think this one is so good because you don't like Collie in the beginning. You don't like any of these characters. They all have so many flaws. They do have positive aspects, some of them, but you really are annoyed at Collie. Why is he getting involved with these people? Why is he letting people walk all over him? Is he really so mentally handicapped or so confused in his own mind that he doesn't understand what's happening? And as the book progresses and as Collie gets more confident, like, you start to realize what's going on in the book. And I just think it was very masterfully woven to lead you in these different directions, to your initial like annoyance, to kind of some aha moments, to like, oh, that's what this book was all about the whole time, you know, and done in under 150 pages, you know, and written with that very noir cadence, that clipped short sentence, simple but dark kind of environment, and way of speaking and the dark mentality of people was really good. I'm glad that I read it. It makes you feel pretty icky the whole way through. Like, it's definitely a book where you're like, ugh, I don't like the decisions that Collie's making. I don't like the way other people are treating him. I don't like the way the other people are treating each other. I don't like the nefarious plot lines. I don't like the, oh, I'll give you help, but I'm not actually going to help you plot lines. Like, you don't like any of it and you feel kind of gross throughout the whole thing, but it's really good. It's really well done and it's really good. So those are all the books that I've read in January. And like I said, I will come back in just a minute and we'll talk about my month as a whole. I'm just here to wrap up all the books that I read in January. I ended up reading 20 books in January. That's crazy. I never expect to read that many books in a month. And I seem to only be able to do that when I'm not really trying. I did read quite a few like really short things. It wasn't so much to read really short things. It was a little bit to read things off of my TBR, but it was also like a way to read some of these really short things that other months I am like, why bother reading this very short thing when there's all these longer things to read? Being the beginning of the year, being the beginning of the month, it was fun to try and get some of these like little shorties that I've been wanting to read off of my shelves. So I got to read some of those. I also got to read some poetry, and I even read more poetry than this that I didn't finish in the month. But then I also read some newer books that I got in the end of 2025 that I was really interested in, as well as some of the oldest books on my TBR that I've been wanting to read and just haven't had the chance. It's super fun that we're back in TBR Spin season, and then I'm back doing the TBR Spin, so I read for that. I read new to me authors that I definitely want to read more of in the future. I read a book that I didn't think I was really going to like, but will definitely be reading the sequel. I read some nonfiction. I read a graphic novel. I read an NYRB book, and I think I've decided that I'm going to try and read at least one NYRB book per month because I haven't been getting through these as quickly as I would like, and I have quite a stack now. I had a reread. So overall, it was a fantastic reading month, really varied, a bunch of different cool things, and a great way to start the year. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I mentioned here. Let me know what you thought of them. Also, let me know how your reading went in January. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!